Hi everyone, it's Nathan. Sorry I've been away for a little while, but I have a few things that I'd like to discuss with you guys. The first one being why you may consider not buying a high super custom. The second one has to do with Facebook and car repairs and fuel filters. And then the third one is about videos and this channel. So the first one is why you might consider not buying a high super custom, or if a super custom is not right for you. I'm not talking about, how many kids do you have and what do you carry with you and that sort of stuff. It's more to do with, how do I put this? Well, let's say this. The 300 series Land Cruiser was just announced and just released. And you can bet that that car has been tested at minus 45 degrees Celsius in freezing cold, icy conditions. And again, on the flip side, I can almost guarantee you that it's been tested at 40 plus degrees Celsius, both in a lab and camouflaged in the real world. And you know what, at 45 Celsius, I can almost guarantee you as well that it was probably pulling its maximum allowed towable weight with its gross combination mass, so the maximum amount for the car and the trailer, probably up the steepest hill they could find and foot to the floor with a whole lot of data logging equipment. And that's modern cars for you. They have what I like to call a fool's margin of error built in, which means that basically you could put a baboon behind the wheel and they won't be able to break it no matter what they do. The operating spectrum for the new cars, modern cars, is so wide. And you as a driver, as an owner, you don't really have to do much. You put fuel in it and you drive it. If there's a steep hill and you want to go faster, you put your foot down. You can really thrash the gearboxes on modern cars as well. Foot to the floor, let it jump through gears, back off, this and that. You don't have to have mechanical sympathy with modern cars anymore. They're so advanced, so robust, so smart. They know everything. And they can change their power outputs, they can change everything depending on conditions. The 300 series Land Cruiser, I'm sure if it's towing maximum weight up a really steep hill on a really hot day, might just reduce its power output by reducing the boost, this and that, and just say, okay, well, I can't really climb it at max power because I'm gonna run hot. I'll just reduce my power output, this and that. That way I'm not burning as much diesel, yada, 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 not as much fuel. It's just gonna run cooler. It's so smart. Older cars, not specifically the super custom, but most cars from the 90s don't have that fool's margin of error built into them. When they tested these cars, like the high-end super, they would have tested it to maybe what the most extreme user may use it for. People were much more careful with their belongings back then. They had a lot more sympathy when dealing with things that they purchased and owned, their assets. They looked after them and really babied things a little bit more than we do today. That's not to say you can't drive a super custom hard. It will drive hard all day long, but you can't thrash on it like with the automatic transmission. You can't foot to the floor, immediately tap off to let a car come through, foot to the floor again, this and that. It'll be lurching all over the place because it's so basic. It's essentially, it doesn't know what it's doing. It just takes numbers from sensors and interprets that into law. So it knows that if this number gets above 8 ohms or something, to switch this. And it doesn't know what that switch does. That's all the ECU knows to do. There is no fool's margin of error built into it. So in order to own a super custom, which is a great car, there's been nothing quite like it before and nothing quite like it since. Brilliant car, super reliable. These do over 1 million kilometers, no BS. They will do over 1 million kilometers in the worst conditions possible. You just have to know a couple of things on how to look after them. If you've seen my channel, I've mentioned a few of those things already. Now, I gotta say a few things about the channel at the end as well. But you need to be a car enthusiast of some sort to own something like a super custom. I'm not saying you need to know how to rebuild an automatic transmission or tear your turbocharger to pieces and put it back together, but you need to know that those components are there. And here's why. So this is a two-part thing. Firstly, you need to know the components in your car and when they might be under strain or heavy load. And then secondly, how you're going to respond. Because again, like the 300 series example, where the computer will adjust its output and things like that, you have to be the computer in the high super custom. So you have to be prepared and know, hey, it's a really hot day. This hill is like 3 kilometers long or something, or 1.6 miles long. And the temperature gauge might start to climb. What am I going to do when that starts to happen? What are the steps that I will take? And you should know that before buying a super custom. You can't just own it, never checking the fluids, and just drive it like a normal car, because one day something will happen and you'll only have a bad experience with it. So I'm not going to tell you what to do when it starts to get warm, because you have to be somewhat of an enthusiast, so you'll have to use your fingers and the internet to find the answers. And then once you find the answers, you will know what causes it, and then what steps you need to take to mitigate it as well. So if you've only had modern cars where you as an owner didn't have to think about anything, didn't have to lift the bonnet up or the engine cover, you took it in to a shop, they did their thing, and you did your thing as an owner, which is put gas in it, diesel in it, and drive it. You can't do that with something like a super custom. You have to be a little bit more invested in it. Also, I've said this previously, I have a great mechanic, but the automotive scene in Australia, for example, is very different to what it was when I was working in workshops many years ago. And here's what I'm trying to say. I'm going to try and put this gently. So mechanical workshops in Australia, if you were to open one yourself, the only way your business would fail is if you murdered someone in broad daylight, possibly a toddler. If you murdered an adult, customers will still be coming in and giving you their cars. You'd have to do something revolting to not be successful and basically be rolling in money. And how does that affect you as a high super custom owner? Well, again, remember how I was talking about modern cars? Well, modern cars come with two things usually found in the glove box: an owner's manual and a service and warranty book. And when you drop your car off to a mechanic, for example, with a modern car, they dive into your glove box and they pull out the service and warranty book, and that book tells them exactly what they need to replace or do to the car at whatever kilometers the vehicle's at, or the mileage. When you roll up with a 24-year-old Toyota van, chances are you won't have a service logbook or even an owner's manual. And even if you did, it would be in Japanese. So kind of pointless, but I'm betting that yours has long lost its service manual. So what does a mechanic do? You have asked for a service, right? And the fallacy in thinking is that we as owners say, I'm going to take my car to a mechanic, it's booked in on this day at 10 a.m. and the mechanic will check everything. He'll make sure that everything is copacetic with my car, and I'll pick it up and I'll happily drive across the country and have a jolly old time for the next 6 months. The mechanic, who's massively overbooked, he just can't get enough time because he's making so much money. So many cars are coming in, so many modern cars that never come back again because they're modern. They have that fool's margin of error built into them. And then you rock up with your crusty old car and he says, what does this guy want? A service. Well, what does a service entail? Ask yourself what a service had 20 years ago versus now. I remember cars being serviced when I was in the automotive game, I should say. And we did everything. Checking and inflating the spare tire. We would remove the jack and check it and lubricate it to make sure that it was working properly. We would rotate all the tires. The windscreen washer bottle was filled up with something like Bars bugs. We'd check each individual wiper blade, everything. If the guy just wanted an oil change, you could bet we were still doing all of that. And, It was the foreman's job or the technician's job to then check when the belts were last done, if it has a timing belt, things like that. If you drop your super custom off to just any old mechanic and say I need a service and expect him to do all that, I hate to say this to you, but chances are he didn't even bother checking when the timing belt was last replaced. So if you're expecting him to check it and give you a call and say, hey Bob, this is your mechanic, just going through the service on your car, notice that the transfer case oil was a bit low and your timing belt's 5,000 kilometers overdue. This is the timing belt kit. This is how much it costs. It comes with a water pump. You're looking at 3.5 hours of labor, this and that, and this is going to be your estimate. Shall we go ahead, yay or nay? That doesn't happen anymore. You drop your car off to a mechanic for a service, you pick it up, it's probably got oil in it and a new filter, probably the wrong kind of oil as well, and off you go. You need to be a car enthusiast to own a super custom. You need to know that there's a rear diff, a front diff, a transfer case, automatic transmission, an engine, oil filter, air filter, fuel filter, when those components were last maintained as well. So if you don't have an history on it, you need to then tell your mechanic, or if you go to one of those places with a service advisor or something, you need to have that conversation with them and say, I've just bought it, I cannot afford to have this thing fail on me because I'm going to be driving it across the country or something. It's a four-wheel drive. I need you guys to check out the four-wheel drive system, check out the wheel bearings. You have to be that specific because if it fails and you go back to the mechanic, all he's going to say is, you asked for a service, mate. That's all I did. You didn't ask me to do the wheel bearings. And if you say, well, you should have checked that, and you say, no, he'll just say no. There's no service logbook for it. You came in for a service, you wanted a quick service, that's all we did. Oil and filter change, that's it. So you have to be an enthusiast to own a super custom. You don't have to know how to rebuild a car yourself. You just need to know about the components, how they work, what's susceptible to being overworked, how to act or how to respond when things become overworked, and adapt your driving style to ensure that you protect the vehicle and make sure that you can stay moving without destroying it, and also how you can relay what maintenance needs to be done on the car to the person that's going to be working on it, your mechanic. So if you can't do that, then you should not buy a super custom or anything like it because you need to be a little bit invested with your vehicle. After all, it is a very unique car, and you as the owner should know how to look after it and should know its history, its maintenance history, what needs to be done, yada, 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 better than anyone else. And also, I have a great mechanic, and this is how you find great mechanics, by having these conversations with workshops. And if they don't want to talk to you about it, if they say, yeah, man, I'm too busy, doing this and that, blah, blah, blah. What do you want? I'm going to check the wheel. Why? What's wrong with it? No, go somewhere else. Go somewhere who will say, oh, okay, yeah, you want us to check the wheel bearings? Yeah, we can pull them out. We can repack them. How many hours is that? Oh, it should only take about an hour. We'll just do the fronts. We'll check the rears as well, this and that. That's how you get started, and that's how you find great workshops. So that's why you may not want a higher super custom. Secondly, Facebook. This is a problem now. When someone has an issue with their car, they post about it on the internet, on Facebook. And look, I don't have a problem with that. It's fine. It's only since I started making videos that people that get bad advice and damage their cars more or open up a can of worms, then I get an email from people saying, I've done this, I've done that, what do I do now? I made a fuel filter video on how to replace a fuel filter on the High Super Custom a few months ago now, one of my first videos. And that's been great. People watch it, they replace the fuel filter, fine. Just recently someone commented though that after they replaced the fuel filter, they realized that their primer pump was buggered, it wasn't working. So I had to give the guy a workaround so that he could get his car running and use it. Which you shouldn't have to have a workaround. It's a lot of fluffing about to try and get it bled using the manual method, what I used to do with big trucks. And why do primer pumps fail? From bad Facebook advice. That's why. I've seen this time and time again, and it's not just with engines and stuff. People have gone out and bought solenoids for their automatic transmission, started replacing things, only to lose gears, to lose overdrive, this and that. And then it turned out to be the torque converter lockup issue that I had with my van and that I posted about. But someone said, go replace solenoids on Facebook. And so Joe Bloggs went out and bought solenoids and dived into his transmission and just ruined it. It's no fun replacing parts that are working perfectly fine, because chances are you're going to break stuff if you're not experienced going in there to do that job in the first place, only to be disappointed because A, you broke something while trying to fix your car, and B, the original issue still exists. So this is what's happening with fuel filter primers. People might have trouble starting their car in the morning. All of a sudden, car's been fine, it's been running like a charm, starts up every day, starts up through the Canadian winter just fine, everything was fine. Only recently it started taking a long time to crank over. Or it's not starting at all, or it's idling rough or whatnot, all of these different things. They post about it on Facebook, and what's the answer that they get? More than one person will comment the same thing. Prime the shit out of your fuel filter primer. They don't put it in those words, but they say open the engine bay, engine cover, and start pumping the fuel primer. Why? It's not a magical button that fixes everything. Priming your fuel filter primer harder than it needs to be is only going to burst its seals. It's just going to damage it and destroy it. The only reason that is there is to pull fuel from the fuel tank in through the filter to get rid of any air and replace that with diesel fuel. That's it. It doesn't need to be really firm or hard. I've never primed it more than maybe 10 times. You hit it like 3 or 4 times and it's firm. That's it. That's all you need. So when someone is having issues with their car and they post about it on Facebook, they're being told, and it's obviously bad enough for me to mention it on a video, they're being told to go out and just start priming the fucking daylights out of their fuel filter primer. So they go out and they basically jump on it like an enraged ape, and they break it, and then they can't start their car, and then their car is immobile. And chances are they're in North America or Canada, so now they're running around trying to find a fuel filter primer or the housing for it to get their car mobile again. It's just not nice. I want you guys to have your cars reliable and running properly. Again, that's all I'm going to say about that. But on top of that, I just have one more thing to add. To mitigate a lot of these issues with rough running, rough starting, and to prolong your injectors and your injector pump, you should be using like a little capful of diesel fuel conditioner and cleaner in every tank. In Australia, you can buy them in like a 1 litre bottle, and that normally treats like up to 1,000 litres of diesel. So, in a lot of cases, you just need to buy like a 1 litre bottle for $20 every year. And that ensures that your fuel tank stays clean, no bacterial algae grows in there. It stops diesel from clogging up in really cold environments or freezing. And it lubricates and cleans the injection pump and your injectors, the two most critical things to a diesel engine. I was recently watching on YouTube, there's a channel called Periscope Films. Periscope like the submarine films. And there was like one of those black and white videos for Chevrolet, and it was like a man explaining the Chevrolet 6.2 diesel engine to Chevy technicians back in the day. They had just released this 6.2 diesel engine, and this man was there to present the new engine to Chevrolet service technicians and how to do the basics on it. And they kept stressing the importance of keeping the diesel fuel system clean. Every time they removed like one of the fuel lines or something, they kept saying it, immediately cap off the diesel lines or the injection pump or this and that, and they say it like 8 times in the video. It's imperative that the injection pump stays lubricated and clean. It's imperative. If you think working on a car needs a clean environment, none more so than a diesel. They basically wanted the 6.2 diesel engines maintained in like a sanitized laboratory. And it's just funny, you know, they knew just how important keeping a clean, lubricated diesel injection system was back then, and we seem to have forgotten about it now. So run some fuel conditioner, save yourself the headache in the long run. Okay, so that's why you may not want to buy a Hiace, or why it might not be the right car for you, and also Facebook. So again, one last thing with Facebook. I kind of feel bad saying this because I want people to ask questions. I just don't want you to ask a question and expect the guy on the other side to know what he's talking about, and then go out and start doing things to your car. Buy a good flashlight for like 10 bucks, one of those USB rechargeable ones, and start poking around in your engine bay. Start digging around. I'll give you one example of why you need to poke around, and it's specific to the Hiace Super Custom more so than any other car. Other cars do this as well, but really the Super Custom, as with most things, takes it to another level. If you have any cooling system work done to your car, say your mechanic has flushed out the cooling system as part of doing the timing belt and the water pump, and then he's topped off the cooling system, he's had the car running for like an hour on the workshop floor, everything seems fine, topped off the overflow reservoir tank to the full mark, puts a cap on it, hands you the keys, thank you very much for your business, see you again in a few months. You drive off with it thinking the car's just been serviced. I'm not going to look at the engine bay, I'm not going to check the fluids, I'm not going to check the oil or anything for like 2 months or so. 3 weeks later, it overheats on the motorway, blows the head, cracks the head, blows the head gasket, and you think, geez, these are so unreliable. Aren't Toyotas meant to be bulletproof? They are. Your Hiace Super Custom will very happily sing past 1.2 million kilometers. Everything will be running just tickety-boo. But you need to look after it, you need to do the basics. And when someone works on your cooling system, you need to, every day for at least a week, pop the engine cover up, grab your flashlight, shine it on the reservoir tank, and I bet you, after the drive home from the mechanics, you let the car cool overnight. The next day, when you look at the overflow reservoir tank, it'll be down by about that much. About 150, 200 mil. I don't know what that is in ounces. But then you think, oh, whatever. You drive it again and the system will pressurize. Maybe you go out, drop your kids off, do some groceries, go to work, come back. The next day, overnight as it cools, if you open the engine cover, the next morning, after it's cooled down for the entire night, you'll check it, it'll now be down by about that much. And it'll keep sipping away from the overflow reservoir tank. So it's important for you to diagnose things, get in there. Why is it doing that? The Super Custom has 2 radiators, a whole heap of ducting and piping, hard lines, soft lines, rubber lines, 2 heater matrices. So no amount of bleeding on a workshop floor will get rid of all of the tiny little air pockets in there. And it's kind of like when you pour a glass of Coke or something and you see these little tiny fizzy bubbles. So these little tiny bubbles all throughout the system. It's impossible to try and bleed it out on a workshop floor. The only way it will completely bleed itself is by fully pressurizing and reaching its operating temperature, which, after all I say about the Hiace overheating, is very hard to achieve its operating temperature. It's built to withstand very hot, very humid conditions. So it will never ever reach operating temperature on a workshop floor. You could idle it for 2 weeks in your driveway. It'll never get up to operating temperature. The same with Pajeros, the same with Delicas. They need to be on boost and be driving for it to fully build pressure. You know when the pipes get really taut? Stiff, I was gonna say, but that seems rude. So once it builds pressure, it's basically working hard, it's sweating away, it's under a lot of pressure, and so it's spitting. It's, you know, when boxers take a sip of water, they don't drink it in between rounds, they spit it out. That's what your HiAce is doing. It's working hard, gets a sip of coolant, spits it into the overflow tank. And with that coolant that gets spat out, comes out these tiny little air pockets, the little air bubbles. That ends up in your overflow reservoir tank. Overnight, as the car chills out, as it cools down, it's a hard workout, it'll grab the straw and take a sip of the coolant from the reservoir tank. But it's going to sip more to replace the air that it spat out. So it's going to drink more and more and more from your reservoir tank. You might think you have a blown head or a cracked cylinder head, but all it's doing is equalizing itself. And then after a few days or so, you should definitely top off the reservoir tank, open the cap itself, and top that off at the radiator cap as well. But if you didn't do that, you'd be in trouble. You might find yourself on Facebook. Before long, you'd find yourself jumping up and down like an ape on your fuel filter. Okay, so that's all I had to say about the HiAce Super Custom. Now about my channel. I want to apologize to you guys formally for some of the crap videos that I've made. I've purposely made those videos. I purposely put myself out there to learn how to edit and to learn how to shoot videos as well. I don't have a lot of money, and so I don't have the best equipment, but I still want to try and get better with each video, whether I improve the sound, whether I improve the shakiness of the camera by finding a new setting, things like that. I was just trying to find my legs whilst providing some useful information to whoever may look it up. I'm working on a video at the moment which will then set the benchmark for all future videos. It's proving very difficult because I need the support of businesses to let me film any work that gets done to my car. And so far, everyone has slammed the door in my face. And it comes down to not having enough subscribers, so they just don't want to deal with you. Even though you're saying, I'm paying you, I'll pay you whatever you want, just let me film what you do to my car. Like Lehman Mechanical allowed me to film the maintenance video, the service video. It's great free advertising, but when you don't have the followers, the door slams in your face. Also, you get dicked around. One of the companies was willing to very generously tint one of the windows on the cars, but then stopped responding to me when it came time to film it. And I have a very unique vision for how I want things to be done. I want it to be very entertaining and very humorous whilst being informative. That's just my style. But I can't show you my style because no one's letting me film it. And that company, even though I offered to pay, just stopped responding to me. So it's been a lot of running around, and I hope to get this video out to you very soon, as quickly as I can. Also, I just wanted to say sorry for the crappy videos that I have been producing. A lot of those videos I'm going to be pulling off YouTube within the next month or two, closer to when I launch this new video coming up, which is going to entail a whole bunch of different things happening to the car that I'm really excited to show you. So, if you have been subscribed to me, if you have been following me, thank you so much for your support. It really does make a big difference. Back when I used to watch YouTube, and well, I still watch YouTube, but people would say that, I'd just be like, whatever. But it makes a massive difference, and I really appreciate it. I don't make any money from YouTube, but I know that at the end of this camera is someone lying in bed, sitting on the toilet, doing something that's watching this. And it makes me really think about what I'm putting out. And it really drives me to create something more interesting and enjoyable and entertaining for you. I've never really felt so inclined to want to do a really good job with anything in my life before, but for you, I do. So thank you, and stay tuned. If you do want to see the old crappy videos, see them within the next month or two. Otherwise, big things coming, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.